Well, hello there, my gorgeous friend Kiki. How are
Hello.
you?
I'm so good. It's so lovely to see your gorgeous face.
Thank you. Kiki and I go way back, way back actually. And it's so nice. Well, we met at the Archangel Summit, I think. When was this? Pre-pandemic, like life pre and post-pandemic.
Yeah.
And our lives have sort of gone in and out of I think, we watch each other on the social medias and see what each other are doing. Although I'm not on social media anymore personally, that's a whole other story. But I really love what you talk about, what you do, around intuitive eating. You share very vulnerably your story, which we're happy for you to share here too. And there's synchronicities because for a lot of you that are listening know that I started my career with eating disorders, disordered eating, and then I worked in the weight loss world for a really long time, and then I transitioned into my current career now. So I'd say I was in the wellness industry for the last 20 years, and so I've seen a lot of different things happening in the wellness industry. And Kiki and I want to have a real, as always on this podcast, honest, polarizing, zero fucks to give conversation around what really, how we feel, what we see, and what matters to us. And that's really the basis for coffee conversations, if that makes sense. So I'm going to turn it over to you. Maybe you want to share a little bit briefly about your whole history, and then we'll dive into what we want to talk about.
Amazing. Thank you, Adele. Yes. So today I am an intuitive eating coach, but it's sort of ironic because I started my world. I first went to business school, which was exactly not what I wanted to actually do, which probably led to my eating disorder in the first place because I wanted to escape my reality. And I then became super obsessed with wellness and felt like, oh my goodness, perfect. This is my passion. I just love wellness. And as an A-type perfectionist, I just took it that 7 steps too far, became incredibly orthorexic, which is basically an obsession with clean eating. I figured my way out of that, and definitely healing wasn't a linear journey. But when I did get to the other side of it, it was so freeing, and I basically recreated the method that I learned that really moved the needle for me, and that's now what I share with women who are struggling with just constant head chatter around what they should be eating, what they shouldn't be eating, and for most women that means overeating, and then getting back to it, and starting on Monday.
Or
So yeah,
under
that's
or
me.
under eating, right? Like for a lot of women, it's what I totally like when you say orthorexia, I think it's a really important term, and that it really actually dives into like kind of, I think, why I left the wellness space in general, while I loved it. I There was so much trauma toxicity inside of it for me.
Yeah.
What I mean by that is like we can take something good and take it too far, right?
Yeah.
And it could be like people that are like, I'm only eating raw today and I'm only doing this. And anytime we say, I'm only doing this and I'm never doing this, and we restrict, not just our body, our mind, our consciousness, the polarized, the law of polarity always says the other side is going to come up. Makes
Yeah.
sense?
And you want it, right? Whenever you say you can't have something. I mean, I remember in dating, right? As soon as I was like, oh no, he doesn't want me. Now I'm like, why am I in love with him? Right. And it's the same thing with with food, right? As soon as you're like, no, I can't do this. I can't eat that, then of course you want it. And you're right, it is, there's under eating and there's overeating. There's one of my questions in my application is like, do you think that you're under eating or overeating or a weird mix of both? And
Yeah.
most women will say it's this weird mix of both, right? It's
Yes.
like you're underdoing it, you're overdoing it, and ultimately you're taking your body outside of homeostasis where everything actually works.
Yeah. And, we can go so far down the rabbit hole here, but I just want to say like a few things to that, which is part of, I think, what's happening in the world at large and why, like, I mean, eating disorders has always been around, but I think probably I would assume there was more prevalence or things got amplified during COVID and over like whatever's going on in the world. What I notice with people is that when we have a lack of safety and certainty outside of ourselves, we try to control the only thing that we can, right? And we can do that in this um, sort of like as a coping mechanism in an unhealthy kind of a way.
Yeah.
And I've noticed a lot of people during COVID and during hard times, it's like we want to clamp on the one thing that gives us safety and control. And that's what we can consume and what we can't consume. And so, like, I think the rise of eating disorders, but also addictions have gone berserk because in a lot of ways, eating disorders are no different than addiction, is that it's a numbing or to feel, it's either to feel something more or to numb the feeling, correct?
Oh, exactly. Right. And it's so interesting because I speak with women, and that's what happened. It's either the pandemic and COVID meant that they were using food emotionally, and then therefore gained all of this weight because they were no longer using food as food, but food became a coping, food became something to do, food became a transition, whatever it is. But then there's the other side where it's like, oh my goodness, actually COVID or the pandemic was amazing because I restricted like crazy. I got really thin, but now I can't keep it up. Right. And so they're like, Kiki, help me. Right. Like I used to be really thin. Actually, the pandemic worked well for me because, they thought that they sort of found themselves, but really they just, as you said, they started numbing through restriction and through control. And it's like, no, that wasn't you either. And that wasn't you in your best self either. And exactly, that's definitely what it was for me. It was, I didn't want to feel going back to, I really never really wanted to go to University of Toronto. I mean, it's a great school, whatever it is. But, and so I was, oh, amazing. I can just focus on being skinny. And then when that didn't work, because the body always wins, it's like, oh, well, now I need to actually face my truth, but I don't want to do that. So let me just eat all this healthy food and, make a nut butter, whatever. And it's like, it really does come down to, you're living out of alignment and you don't want to feel your feelings. And therefore, whether it's food, whether it's pornography, whether it's drugs, right? It's like we all have our vice. And for, I think, women in the wellness world, it's like, oh, I'll use food, but I'll make it healthy. And then there's no, guilt around it.
Yeah.
And that just, it's obviously doesn't work.
No. So there's so many things you've said that I want to touch on, and I know we want to touch on something I think really important. We'll go back to this whole idea of living out of alignment. And so I want to talk about that for a sec. The fucking world at large, for the most part, is living out of massive alignment. And when I say alignment, I mean alignment with the truth. And I don't mean your perspective of the truth. I just mean capital T, universal truth. And that truth is that you're here, you have a purpose, that purpose came before you, and your job is to live out your purpose, really, okay? That's the biggest truth in the universe. And when we understand that truth, we run it through the filter of what's my purpose? Is this in alignment with my purpose? Is this what I really want? It's like having the trust to be able to check in with yourself and go, does this make me feel good or bad? Like, is this my truth? But because we're so numb to that, because of our conditioning, and I won't even go down that rabbit hole because that's the basis of my work. The idea is by the time people wake up and become conscious to the fact that, holy shit, I'm not living in alignment with my truth. I didn't want to go to business school. I didn't want to do, therefore I'm so fucking miserable, right? And then I'm going to fixate on the only thing that brings me some form of pleasure or pain in this moment to feel something. And I think that this is probably one of the biggest calamities of mankind in general right now, is that so many people are so far off their truth, their path, because of the fear of what other people are going to think, rejection, cancel culture. I mean, I've talked about that on my podcast so much, like why, like in this kind of tethers to what we want to talk about, which is like, why is it so hard for people to do and say what they really want?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I want to talk to you about that because you mentioned before we press record that like I talked about like being polarizing, and I'm not trying to be polarizing to be an asshole. I'm trying to be polarizing because because we need to have both sides of the story always. Mm-hmm. I think we always need to look at the law of polarity says that everything in the universe has both equal and opposite. And so when the narrative or culture is saying one thing, you got to look at what's going on the other side. Okay. And one of the things you shared is how, as an intuitive eating coach, you're polarizing because you talk about it's okay to want to be thin. So let's talk about that, because I actually think that beyond just weight as a topic, we could talk about this. We could sort of put in anything. It's okay to want to be rich. It's okay to want to be successful. It's okay to want to be, it's okay to want to be whatever is really, I think, the context of this conversation. Because for me, your life is about finding out what it is that your purpose and your truth is and living it in a way that's unapologetic, like you said. So go ahead.
Yeah. Yep. And so here's the thing. Interestingly enough, so I don't even, Adele, I said to you thin. I will use the word, dare I say, skinny. And that was simply because I worked with I worked with a business coach, and she said, well, Kiki, why don't you just say it like it is? Like, she was like, she was one of my clients. She was like, I hired you because I want to be skinny. And I'm like, oh my God, you can't say that word. And she was like, why not? I want to be
On
skinny.
the internet?
Yeah. Right. I was like, no, you can't say that. She was like, but I hired you because I want to be skinny. And like, that's what it is. Like, let's say it how it is. And so I was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to run with this. And of course I got attention. I got a lot of hate. Oh my goodness. You're, talking women into having eating disorders. And I was like, no. I'm just bringing light to the truth for some of us, which is actually, it matters to me how I look, right? And yeah, I understand that right now our culture, whatever you want to call it, it prefers, or at least the subculture that I'm in, however you want to call it,
Yeah,
it's
the
like, oh,
zeitgeist.
I feel like I get more attention, more positive attention when I'm thinner, right? Of course, there's a balance to that, right? It's not as thin as possible, but thinner. And so it's interesting that now that I'm fully saying it, that's I'm surprised that you let me on your podcast. Like, there are people that they're, oh, sorry, Kiki, like, no, we're very, we're weight neutral and we're body positive, like as if I'm body negative by allowing women to admit that, like, no, it matters to me that I'm not carrying excess. Not only go away, the health things, not even like, simply for the fact that I will feel better because I'll be socially validated by others. Like, I'm just going to admit it, right? And it's like, and I'll be accepted more and all of those things. And why is that so bad? Like, why should now we have to be, oh no, but it shouldn't matter. It's body positivity, right?
I don't even, so explain to me what body positivity means.
So I thought it was like,
You're
when
allowed
I
to
hear
want
that
what you want with
term,
your body, right?
yeah, exactly. Just like everything is good, everything is positive, right? I'm like, okay. But apparently it means, well, from my experience, it means allowing women to overeat and then being like, no, it's fine. And you should, instead of seeking support for the fact that you're binging, you should just embrace it. Right. Or like, oh, no, you should just get over the fact that people think that you should be thinner. It's a problem with society. Right. It's like, okay, sure, maybe it is, but also I want to be thinner. Right. And so, and if I can do that without harming myself, without, having
Alignment.
this addiction to
Yeah.
food, right, and actually getting to the truth, then wonderful. And as you said, I mean, every time I speak with clients, yeah, at the beginning it's food related, and then we get to this point in like literally our second session, they're like, well, Kiki, this isn't really related to food, but, and it's like, I don't really want to be living here. I don't really want this job. I don't really want this. I'm like, yeah, because would you be overeating or undereating if you woke up and actually liked your life?
Yes.
Probably not, right?
So this, I mean, this is really, it's really fascinating because I have so much to say in general in life right now. So I like, it's really hard for me because there's so much going on in the world right now that is just crazy. And we live in a time in history. So if we just take food out of it for a second, like I said, because I don't care that much about talking about food specifically, but I think it's a beautiful entry into, we're living in a time in history where it's just actually just not okay to say anything. It's not okay to say anything. People are incredibly sensitive. We've entered into dangerous territory because we're not allowed for healthy debates anymore.
Yeah.
And this all started happening around the pandemic, or probably just before, where there's a couple things. Like, I talked about this on a podcast episode just last week with a psychologist, and we had an incredible conversation around, because people are in a trauma response. This is what it boils down to, which if you look at eating disorder as a trauma response, I started my career in eating disorder. Eating disorder is actually, in the DSM, the Diagnostic Manual of Disease, it's actually a mental health disorder. It's not a body disorder. And it's a mental health disorder because it's literally, the mechanics are no different than addiction, which is why there's so much comorbidity with eating disorders and drinking too much or doing drugs or sex or cutting or anything like that. And it's really, when you break it down, you go back, you go down, 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 all the way down to the etiology. And where did it start? It's a childhood wounding, a core wounding of feeling unworthy, feeling unlovable, and it's essentially a belief system that is flawed. Okay. Yeah. It's not about the food. It's not about the body. It's about the deep, like, it's like nobody who is healthy and in alignment does that to themselves. Yes or no? Whether you're overeating or undereating. Okay. Absolutely. But you can't fucking say anything these days. Which is why I have a podcast where I can say whatever the fuck I want. And if you don't like it, unsubscribe.
No, Adele, you're triggering me. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh yeah, exactly. Don't even get me started on the word trigger. But you can't say anything. We're not allowed. And this is where I wanted to go with this conversation. Because, if we take, it's okay to be thin, it's okay to be whatever. To me, body positivity, if I were to, like, because I don't really know when people throw these fucking hashtags out now, I'm way too old. Like, I feel like I've aged myself, because when people say things like spill the tea, or like, I'm just like, oh my God, I'm way too old. Like, I am not on TikTok. Like, my team manages my like, you can't catch me in certain places because I just think it's so stupid. But anyway, I digress. Part of the problem is that there's just no room for healthy debate anymore. And when we look at the world at large, and there's so much polarity. I mean, we've never lived in a time that is this polarizing, between what happened during COVID to what's happening in the Middle East, to what was happening in Russia, to like, it's literally this against that, and how you divide people and how you create anarchy and chaos is through division. Yeah. And in the weight loss world, in the health world, in the wellness world, there's another variation of that, but it's like wrapped in this pretty wellness bow. Okay. Yeah. That's how I see it, which is why I'm completely detached myself from it, which is body positivity, which to me should just sound like, be happy with your body, whatever you choose. Like, let's accept everyone for whoever they want to be. Right. Yeah. And I love it when I see women rocking, they're confident rocking what they're rocking. It's like mazel tov. It's so amazing. But if I want to be like I'm right now, a little spoiler alert, I don't want to say too much because it's an exciting little side project I'm doing, but I'm doing like a 6-week transformation challenge with one of my trainers, and we're going, like, I'm just taking my body to the next level, training really hard. As you know, if you follow me on Instagram, I love to train, but I'm doing it so that I can achieve a certain goal, take myself to the next level, meet my edges, because that's what I like to do, both in mind, body, etc. Some people might go, oh my God, like, does she need to be, her muscles this? Or it's like, it's none of your business. Body positivity should be, in my opinion, Adele loves to train. It's where I meet my maker. It's where I meet my edges. It's where I meet the levels of my comfort zone. It's showing my body at 42 what I can do. It's showing that anything is possible at any age. I do it always in the most healthy, aligned, so balanced. Like, it's never about being extreme, right? It's literally like, this is my life, but I also, this is my goal. So I want to do like a photo shoot. I want to look back at one day and say, oh my God, look at me. I was 42. I was so fucking hot, right? And now I'm crinkled and shriveled, and but like,
you're never gonna be crinkled.
42, I was so hot. And body positivity to me should be, everybody has body autonomy to do what they want with their body, and it's actually none of anyone else's business what they do with their body.
Yeah. And even you saying, and it's never extreme, but also what if it was? And what if you chose to be extreme about it? And the more that I know that your reach and your fame is growing right now. And the more that it does, the more that you're not going to be allowed to be extreme, right? Like, if you do want to, and of course you're not going to care, but I'm just saying, right? And, it's interesting. The other day I did a little, one of those green screens, and I was talking about Whitney Eve Port, who I used to watch The Hills, and I love that show. And she recently had a weight loss. She spoke about it in a very authentic way, and she's quite thin at the moment. And I was just talking about, some insights that she was sharing, and I had to redo that video 2 times, and both times I was just like, hey, I'm just gonna close it up, because it got so much hate, because I was speaking about someone who was very thin, and it was almost like, how dare you? That's not allowed. She's not allowed to be super thin, right? Like, that's triggering. That's automatically telling girls that they need to be thin. And how dare you for bringing attention to someone who's thin, right? And it's like, No. We
Yeah.
can like what? We can talk about people also doing extreme things. It's different if they're then seeking help and there's, you know what I mean? It's like, oh, you know what? I got myself in this hole and I want to get out for sure. Let's go, right? But also, it's, and you can never tell from the outside, right? It's like, who knows? I know you, and I would go to Equinox, and I would sometimes see you have a muffin, and I remember I was fully in it at that point. I was fully in my orthorexia, and I
Oh,
would see Adele like super like fit as hell, and she'd be like
eating a
walking out with
muffin.
a muffin, and I'd be like, what? I was like, what? And right, and it was almost like, no, she must be bulimic, she must be this, because I was
Really?
projecting
Mm,
my own, like, oh, like there's no way that you can have balance, right? Balance means you must be a little bit big, or you must be what, like I had my vision of what balance meant, and therefore anyone that looked very thin or very fit, whatever, I automatically assumed they must have something wrong, right, that they're hiding. And I think that that's now the vision that everyone is seeing the world. Like anyone who is either succeeding because they're thin or whatever it is, it's like, oh, well, they must have a disorder, right? And it's like, no, maybe they just love their life.
yeah. So let me speak something. Let me maybe they just love their life. I love how you would see me eating a muffin and be like, oh my God, there's no way she's eating a muffin. Muffins are my favorite fucking thing of life. The only sad
Same,
thing
I love
that
muffins.
I got diagnosed with celiac disease 3 years ago. So it's a whole other story on my health journey. But so I haven't eaten gluten, but don't you worry. I will drive across town to find the best gluten-free muffin that I pretty much shove in my face every day. So anyway, back to extremes. Um, I mean, I started my career in eating disorders. I was a professional dancer for 18 years of my life. I saw both sides of extremes always. This was, I think, which is always what got me so fascinated with human behavior, really, ultimately. But when you said, I love what you said, like, what if what you were doing was extreme? And I actually want to speak to that, because thank you for actually saying that. Thank you for actually saying, because it's true, like I had to almost say, but it's not extreme, but actually it is extreme. So let me
Yeah.
qualify. And I want to say this again, with people have to listen with viewer discretion is advised, and you have to have discernment, just like with every conversation on this podcast. What I do in my life, most people would consider extreme, because I live on the 0.01% of the success margin that makes me who I am. Okay. There is a reason I'm a multi 7-figure business owner. There is a reason I work 4 hours a day. There is a reason I'm in the best shape of my life. And that is because I do live in the extremes. And what I mean by that is it's what Malcolm Gladwell calls the outlier. I am not the norm. If you were to look at what I'm doing for this 6-week challenge, but even beyond the 6-week challenge is pretty much what I do every day. I get up at 5:30 in the morning. I start my day with my breath work or my meditation. I'm out of the house by 6:15 to go train my ass off, because it's the fucking thing I love the most, is to push heavy weights with my trainer, to meet my edges, to rock my body. I meal prep my meals. I eat pretty much almost similar things most of the time, because I am celiac, so I don't eat meat. I'm I'm like pescatarian basically, and so there's not that many things I can eat, so to speak, that I really love. But like, do I eat French fries and drink a fucking dirty martini from time to time? Absolutely, absolutely. But what I live my life in the extreme of success. Success is an extreme. To be a multimillionaire is extreme at 42 years old. To be in the shape that I'm in is extreme. To prep my meals in advance, to make sure I'm eating properly and the right amount of food, right, for the goals that I want and a busy day is extreme. Why? Because most people want to drive through McDonald's and then bitch about why they're overweight. Most people have excuses as to why they don't go to the gym, because they're parents. I'm a parent too.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was a single parent going to the gym every day.
Yeah.
I
Isn't it weird that it's just you're super intentional, and therefore, and that's so extreme because
Thank
people
you.
are so unintentional?
But let's talk about exactly. So it's, instead of saying it's extreme, it's highly intentional. And it's highly unconventional, because
Yeah.
when I was a single parent, when my son was really, really young, and the reason I joined Equinox at that time is because they had a daycare.
Oh,
And
I
I
didn't even
was
know
like,
that.
oh yeah, Ilya was going to the gym when I think they took him at like, I think 3 months, 4 months, I was able to bring him in. And he literally, he knew the routine, and like he grew up going to the gym with me every weekend, and mom goes to work out and I go to kids club and then we have a smoothie after, and like this became our vibe. And rather than finding reasons why I couldn't, the extreme is I always find ways that I can. And I think to your point around what if it is extreme, and that's why I wanted to qualify and say the way that I live my life in general is extreme. I speak my truth, right? I demand success in my life. I provide an incredible service to my clients and customers. I care deeply. I'm a pro. I show up like a pro. I'm trained. I've been doing this for 20 years. And that's extreme when you really look at it, because most people are indoctrinated into what I call middle class mindset, which is kind of like mediocrity, sadly. And we never escape the veil of like, don't have too much, don't ask for too much, don't look like how you want to look, don't wear nice things, don't be too successful, don't talk about your money, it makes people uncomfortable. Yeah. Your discomfort about my success is not my problem.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my goodness. This has been therapy for me. After all the abuse that I've been getting, I can be like, oh my God, it's your own trauma, right?
It is your own trauma. But but I actually want to say something to people listening, because this actually picks up perfectly from the conversation I had with the psychologist last week, which was about trauma, and that most people are walking around with complex PTSD, but they don't know it. So let me give you some examples. Because of everything that's happened since 2020, we have been living in a time in history that we've never had for this long. Okay. Like we've had bouts of it, but like it's been literally consistently one crazy thing after the next. And signs of PTSD are when people are constantly threatened or fearing their life. Okay. Which we have been. Signs of PTSD is easily triggered, easily angered. Okay. Look at the fucking internet right now.
Yeah.
Projection, mood disorder, addiction, these are all signs. So why I'm speaking this truth really loudly and maybe a bit on a soapbox these days is because what I'm trying to do with love, which is always the context, is to wake people up a little bit and to say, listen, like if you need to go get help because you are suffering, PS, there's no shame. I was suffering from complex PTSD for so long that I had to take a month off work in August to go do some very, very, very deep neurological healing. Okay. People are not in good ways right now. But what they're doing is, rather than saying, I'm not in a good way right now, let me go project my pain on Kiki, because she's saying her truth. She's not putting it on you. She's speaking about, I want to be thin. Mazel tov, you want to be thin. Be fat, be fat. Like, who cares? But I have to, instead of dealing with myself and my own trauma, I have to go get mad that Adele said this or Kiki said that, or how dare she talk about a girl who's thin, but it's somehow okay, like you said, to talk about someone who's overweight. Like, again, it's like we cannot talk about what's not in the narrative is really the problem.
Yeah, exactly.
My role, my podcast, is about opening up people's mind to start to critically think for themselves.
Yeah. And wow. And it really goes to show that how why we're so I'm very I think because of now the world that I have been brought up in, there is a piece of me that questions myself all of the time, and most people think I'm confident and outgoing or whatever, but I think you really nailed it with, you're not allowed to have a healthy debate. So there's sort of like this always like, oh, am I allowed to say this? Am I therefore, and then am I allowed to think this? And then therefore, and so, and it's when you go down that path, it's in a way hard to be successful, because the more successful you are, the more that you're going to ultimately piss people off.
No, I completely disagree. And I want to take that out of your consciousness. I got to say this.
Take it out, Adele. Take it out.
Like, this is like a coaching moment. Okay.
I'm ready.
That is fucking middle-class mindset, indoctrinated bullshit thinking. I completely disagree. The world right now needs people standing up saying the opposite thing, because you are going to help the person that doesn't fit into the narrative, and you're going to stand out enough to harmonize the people that really want what you have, rather than blending in. I'm more and more successful the more truth I speak. I'm more successful, not less, because you either like what I'm saying or you don't. So if you don't, you can move out of the way, no problem, no hard feelings. But if I do, if I stir something in your soul, and I'm always say that I'm an expander for people. Like that's what my goal is. My purpose in life is to activate something in you, right? Even if it's through a trigger, but then you take a step back and you go, I really fucking, something she said resonated. Then I did my job. So I disagree. I actually think that we live in a world that, and it's happening a lot. Like you can see it. I'm part of a couple different masterminds, and so is my husband. We get to be around some of the like the top people in this space, the personal space, development space, like Sean Whalen and Andy Frisella, and like different people who are starting to come out and speak a lot more openly about what the other side of the narrative. Okay.
Yeah.
And you should see people are like, thank God someone else is saying something different. So don't let yourself get sucked into the TikTok bullshit sea of toxicity around. You know, people aren't going to like what you have to say if you're speaking your truth. That's a fact.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
And it's interesting because there's, I'll get like 50 messages in a day being like, Kiki, like you've helped me so much. And some of them, they're not even clients, right? It's just like, I've been watching your content, but it's the one person that it's like, oh my God, like she's an intuitive eating coach and she's talking about weight loss. Doesn't she know that those two things are opposite? Like, really? They're opposite?
Well, and I think that speaks to, before we wrap up, like we always fixate on the one person that has something negative to say. I've had the same story where it's like 100 people would say this and then one person would say that. And our mind is literally always going to go to the one person that we think we did something wrong. And again, that's our trauma to heal. That's our own wounding. That's coming to a place of emotional maturity and saying, look, for you, Kiki, it's like you're very aligned with your message. It's like, I do believe this. And because you believe this, you can help other people who believe it too.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? You don't need to be what the whole narrative society is saying around body positivity, which to me doesn't sound very positive at all.
No. Yeah.
Anyway, we could talk for days about this, but
oh my God, it's always so fun with you. Thank you so much.
Oh my God, I love it.
I was coming on your podcast. Never mind. I got a therapy session. This was good.
Is there anything you want to leave people with? And we're going to link up where they can find you if you feel aligned or you're curious about what Kiki is talking about. But are there any kind of final things that you feel you want to say?
I think just driving home that it's not an eating issue, like you highlighted. I'll say it's a life issue. And again, I think that's triggering because it's like, oh my God, how dare you? Oh, I have to change my life. Yeah. Right. If you're under eating or you're overeating, sorry. Like, yeah, it's not just, oh no, I just need to intermittent fast. Like, no, sorry. You actually do have to change your life. And that can be in a small way, but it could also be in a big way. And so stop fixating on the wrong problem because it's not the food. It's living out of alignment.
I love that. Kiki, this has been tremendous. We're going to link up, but where can people find you on Instagram or where do you hang out?
Amazing. So on Instagram, where people are nice to me, I'm Kiki_Athanas. And then if you want to emotionally abuse me, I'm on TikTok, which is Kiki_Athanas.
Do not go emotionally abuse her. I forbid that. But I love that. Kiki, it's been so amazing. I hope that people, as always, I want to say this last thing before I go, but back to the word trigger. We have butchered that word in society since over the last few years, meaning that like everything that is a trigger is not allowed to be said. But I was trained by some of the greatest mentors in the world, who some of them are no longer alive on this planet at this moment, but I've been trained by the greats. And one of the things that I know, especially as a therapist, is that it is only when we are triggered that we change. And so it's not about not triggering people and being afraid. It's about saying what there is to say, having someone deal with their emotions about that and get to a place of emotional maturity where they can actually see that they're the ones having the experience inside of themselves, that there's something in there for them to work through, that it's not about we have to stop triggering people. We have to stop using that as a way out and actually look through the lens of what about this is triggering me. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Next time someone says, oh my God, you triggered me, I'm going to say, you're welcome. I'll send you my bill. Is that PayPal or e-transfer?
Yeah, that's good. That's good. All right, my love.
Thank you, Adele.
You're welcome.